Arise now, ye tarnished, ye dead, who yet live.
Hello, this is Jackafe, and I'm going to do something differently than just simply write a review because, personally, I don't believe Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree needs one.
Oh!
But rather, I want to touch on how the game has reverted and changed my own expectations on what it truly means to be a DLC, and whether a DLC should even be considered contender for Game of the Year. Or DLC of the Year. And you'll have to forgive me. I am fucking tired. I just beat Elden Ring and it kicks the shit out of me! So I'm a little weary. I'm a little wired up. I'm a little edgy. But fuck me, that was fun. First, however, before I go into even any more detail, I first have to get something off my chest. And you'll have to forgive me if my hair is a little wet, but I just washed it with all the fucking tears I've been hearing from players who've been crying about constantly how the game is too difficult or unfair. Souls-like genres were fucking literally praised for its difficulty. But now because Elden Ring DLC, which is in endgame content, provides an increase of difficulty than what is seen in the base game, it is no longer acceptable. Do you know what I mean? The game provides you every single fucking system and mechanic and buff and talisman and armor and builds that you need in order to actually overcome these challenges if you actually ingrain yourself in these fucking systems. There are 100 ways in which the game provides you in their systems and mechanics that are designed to help you in this fucking game. If you don't want to, like, quote unquote be good or get good, just going down the list, you have a consumable called boiled crab that increases your physical mitigation. You have a wondrous flask called Opuline Hard Tier, right? You have the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. You've got spells like Golden Vow. You've got the Erdtree fragments, which is the new progression system of the game, which incentivizes you to explore the world, right? You have summons. You can fucking summon other people. You can summon NPCs. You know what I mean? There are countless of different broken builds that have been created by fucking Sekiro-ass nerds that are designed to help you beat these encounters, right? There's talismans specifically devoted to the damage type in terms of that you want to mitigate. And all the things I just spoke about was just mitigating damage, right? Increasing your defenses. And I get it. You have your build and, you know, your level 200 rune build was able to beat the base game. But isn't part of what makes a game so good is the fact that you have to actually play around with the systems and mechanics that it gives you? That you actually have to tinker, that you have to go back and maybe farm something else, an item or whatnot, in order to overcome that challenge? I mean, there are still a ton of fucking things you can do and keep the same build that you have, whether you're a caster or whether you're a big dick two-handed wielder. Part of the fun of playing a game is to figuring out how to break it. And all this like caveat around not using summons and that's not appropriate. Would you not use torrent because it helps you go faster through the map? Is that not fun? Do you know what I mean? Is there some type of fucking Souls-like Olympics that I'm not aware of? Is there some kind of esports entertainment where people are getting fucking paid millions of dollars because they revert to just fucking dodging mechanics? No. Use the systems in place. Have fun tinkering with your build and changing it up to meet and overcome the challenge that presents yourself. That's just good game design. To allow that freedom to a player to experiment and find their own way. The Erdtree blessings are also a huge component of the game in terms of its progression system. Now, they had to implement this shit so that it stopped people with fucking level 250 who are not even in the, you know, who are not even in NG Plus from completely destroying the content. They needed to add those mechanics to scale things down so that everyone can come into the DLC at an appropriate level. There was no other way. And I believe having to explore the map and look for these Erdtree fragments is an amazing experience. I'm going off a fucking tangent here. But I just needed to get this off my chest. People are beating this game. If you're having a hard time, there are things in the game that can help you. There are people that can help you. Relax, enjoy the game, have fun. It's not supposed to be something that you just cruise right over, right, and beat in 4 hours. I just don't understand how we can praise a company for offering this unique experience of difficulty and challenge and the feeling and satisfaction you get of actually overcoming it, and how that was the whole reason we've praised From Software and how this genre got so popular, but now is the exact same reason why we criticize them. I just don't fucking get it. I feel most of the people that are complaining about this game are the ones that had the capability to fucking stand in one spot and farm fucking, 1,000,000 fucking runes so that they could reach level 200 and therefore crush the entire base game. That's no longer applicable here in the expansion, because how the hell could they allow someone that is completely overpowered to just steam through the DLC? I mean, that wouldn't be accordance to what they are, what Souls-like games are. I just want to make a plea, Miyazaki, if you fucking hear this, I don't understand why you would. Don't change anything you guys are doing. Don't listen or bend what you guys are doing and developing and creating to the will of those that are too fucking, stubborn or just bad at the game. What I don't want, and I don't think what anyone wants, even the people that may be having negative reviews, is for them to drastically change the formula that's made them so fucking successful in the first place. You can't have one without the other. You can't ask for a difficult game that you have to use its systems and mechanics, and you have to keep trying and trying in order to overcome that challenge and the gratification from that challenge, right? You can't ask for that and then ask for an easier game, because you won't get what you've just sought out and what you've loved about the industry and game genre in the first place. I was just starting to fucking rant and mumble over my words. But I think my point has been made. Okay, I'm going back to the main point of this video, which is to talk about how awesome an experience I had with this game. No matter how fucking pissed off it's made me. I hate it. I hated the DLC. But I loved it. It's like P90X. Get it? I mean, at the end of the day, you're never gonna fucking satisfy everyone. It doesn't matter if it's this goddamn YouTube video or if it's a established company like From Software. And I understand that some people may not enjoy the game because it's too difficult. And if a game is overly difficult, it's not fun. I totally understand that. But the game has answers to that difficulty. That's where I'm getting at. Okay, now that my rant is over, for those that do want a little bit of a quick review or about my impressions, here it is. The game is rated Elden Ring out of Elden Ring. I don't think we need to talk about this. If you're a fan from Software and you enjoyed the base game of Elden Ring, then get the game. And if you don't have the game, well, get good with your financials and buy it. In all seriousness, though, the base game is wildly known as a masterpiece. And because this is an extension of this, in every sense of the word, the DLC inherently becomes one as well. It's everything you can come to expect if you're familiar with From Software and the base of Elden Ring, just simply more of it. It's more Elden Ring. The game provides a new map, new progression systems, new enemies, new bosses, new weapons, new spells, new items, and everything your little tarnished ass could hope for. Now, do not expect the game to be radically different than the base game or reinvent anything by any means. And let's be honest, why would they? This is more Elden Ring, and providing how amazing the base game is, running through my initial 40-hour playthrough has been an absolute delight. A true gift for all their masochistic fans. After all, the game is advertised as a DLC, and moving too far away from that formula that's already proven to be almost perfect would make no fucking sense and would inherent too much risk. But I can go on and on and on about what makes Elden Ring great, right? And what makes the DLC great, because the base game is great. And that's been reiterated to death. So instead of writing like a review where you can already kind of predict its outcome, and because it's hard to compete with, well, reviewers who get early review copies, and to be frank, I don't know why I wouldn't receive one with my huge fucking following base. But I digress. I've been reading a lot on Reddit and reviews, and there's been a reoccurring theme that seems to just keep popping up over and over and over again, and it's in regards to the size and scope of the game. Shadow of the Erdtree is categorized as a DLC, according to From Software, but make no mistake, this is bigger than most full-sized games. There's a ridiculous amount of content to be had here, whether you're talking about the size of the map, its sheer scale in terms of just the verticality it provides, or its biome diversity, or that it provides levels of interconnectivity that fans of Dark Souls would love. Whether you're referring to additional major boss battles and mini bosses and legacy dungeons and medium dungeons, there's a ton here to overcome and to explore. And just like the base game, throughout this world, you can find a ton of treasures like new weapons, armors, spells, talismans, summons, everything that's actually suitable to builds you're already familiar with. I would estimate that it would take anyone roughly between 35 to 40 hours to experience everything this game has to offer. And I mean, for a DLC, that's extremely impressive. Just keep in mind, Diablo 4 was selling a fucking horse for $60. In an earlier interview, Miyazaki said that the landmass of the DLC would be roughly the same size as Limgrave, if not a little bigger. The lie detector determined that was a lie. After doing some comparison between the maps of the base game and DLC's newly added Land of Shadow, I'd say that the expansion map is about the size of Limgrave and Lurnia of the Lakes if you were to put them together side by side and view them from a horizontal perspective. But it's much more than that when you actually incorporate the verticality of the map, something they really tried to emphasize here in the DLC. The verticality they added to the map makes the zones feel colossal and just extremely deep compared to the base game. If you haven't got what I'm trying to get at here, the game is absolutely fucking massive. So massive, in fact, that some people don't actually consider this to be a DLC, but rather a full-blown expansion. And some would go as far to say that it is like an Elden Ring 2. This segues to the point of the video. The topic I wanted to bring to everyone's attention and hopefully spring some debate is more centered around what classifies as a DLC versus an expansion or versus a sequel. Also, can a DLC even be considered a contender for Game of the Year? Because even if you took away the base game, what's here technically could be a whole game in of itself. The reason that this topic even came to mind is that Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree and the sheer size it provides to us gamers and its content just blurred these lines for me extensively of what it means to be advertised as a DLC and what the future standard of gaming should be. And if that's not already giving enough praise to the fucking game, I don't know what can. I mean, the game in every sense of the word is a DLC. It's downloadable, digital, additional endgame content that uses the exact same formula as its predecessors. I think the term DLC and what we typically know it as today really started in the 360 era when, much like the name implies, it was downloadable content, but it was typically much smaller in scale and scope. Game DLCs were just minor additions to a game, like a new quest or new items or minor changes to the existing game world. These DLCs added minor weapons and armors and cosmetics to the game, which now that I think about it, probably sprung forth the birth of the dreaded microtransaction. But that's a whole other topic for another day. To be honest, and this will tell you my fucking age, but 20 years ago, we would have called Shadow of the Erdtree an expansion, and it would have came in a fucking box. It's too large to be a DLC, isn't it? But I mean, maybe we've forgotten what the proper term DLC means and the expectations that should be derived by them. I mean, when I look at past advertised rich content DLCs, Baldur's Gate 2, Throne of Ball comes to mind. Warcraft 3, Frozen Throne comes to mind. Now, those games from a content and scope perspective in that era, at that time, would rival, I believe, what Erdtree provided to us. But then why does the term now, DLC, just seem not as impactful? Now, if you look at the term expansion, right? Expansion packs were typically many additional hours of content. They were whole new areas, storylines, mechanics that were separate from the base game. And when you play Shadow of the Erdtree, it just seems to fit there. I mean, if you take a look at recent expansions that have been released, like the Monster Hunter Iceborne or Sunbreak, I mean, they were marketed as expansions. So this brings the question, well, what is the difference between a DLC or an expansion? Is it the hours you put into a game? Is it the amount of content that there is? Or is it massive changes or introductions to new mechanics, its progression systems, its story, or its game loop? Or is this conversation literally fucking pointless and it's more simpler than that? That DLC means downloadable content, and therefore its size and scope really can be anything. Or is the term DLC or expansion just a way to market a game regardless where it's classified or how players perceive it or the value that they get? Is there even a distinction at all? With that said, I sometimes wonder why From Software didn't advertise or market this as an expansion, because they were aware of the scope of the game and what it would deliver. And it kind of fits in the term of expansion on how we interpret it today in the video game industry. Or was From Software simply keeping it safe and sandbagging because they wanted to revert any backlash they would get by calling this an expansion and maybe setting too high of an expectation for themselves? I mean, Miyazaki did say that the new map is about the size of Limgrave, so we already know that he's consistent with downplaying expectations. And you have to wonder, if From Software calls this a DLC, then what the fuck does an expansion mean for them? Now, although people have been jokingly calling this Elden Ring 2, I don't believe we can go as far as to even say it's a sequel. For a sequel, I believe a game truly needs to reinvent themselves, whether it's from a graphical or gameplay standpoint. Whether it's the introductions of new progression systems, or new mechanics, or new story, or even protagonist altogether. But to be honest, we've seen games that were created as a sequel, and yet not much of the game design changed. And the Uncharted series comes to mind here, or even The Last of Us. Now, this kind of segues to my next point, and a lot of the topics I've been reading about is whether or not Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree could be considered a contender for Game of the Year. Now, from my knowledge, no DLC or expansion has ever won Game of the Year. Sequels do, though, right? Last of Us 2 being the last. Which then takes me to my point. Well, then if sequels can win Game of the Year, then what really determines a sequel? Does it have to be an entirely new story and protagonist? Does it have to improve on its graphics? Does it have to have a new art style? Does it need new progression systems or gameplay? Or is it simply where the developers just add a number next to the game and advertise it as such? Many sequels, like Uncharted or Last of Us, provided us with rich new experiences and content, but didn't actually radically change their game formulas. And that's exactly what Shadow of the Erdtree is doing. So then, by and large, could that be considered Game of the Year? Does that count? But just because it's advertised as a DLC, it doesn't? I don't know. Again, this could all be fucking pointless. Now, although many would want it to be a contender, I think from some kind of technicality or bureaucratic standpoint, it won't be. Shadow of the Erdtree may not win Game of the Year or even be seen as a contender, but it certainly cemented the game as one of the best in the generation. I also believe that it raised the bar, not only for developers, but for ourselves, on setting the expectations of what it means to have downloadable content and the value that's derived from this. That the term DLC should mean much more than simply new skins or new weapons or new little maps. That a DLC in every sense of the word should actually be a major extension and experience of the game itself. I also think From Software brought the conversation of value into mind. That the price of a DLC should be in fact match the quality and content of the base game. If you pay 2/3 of the fucking price, you should get 2/3 of the fucking experience. Again, honestly, I'm just kind of spitballing these points, but I'm generally very curious on what you think Elden Ring. Is it as a DLC? Is it an expansion? Is it a sequel? Is there a fucking difference? At the end of the day, does it really fucking matter as long as the price point matches the experience and value that gamers receive? Can it be a contender for Game of the Year? Is it really any difference than what The Last of Us 2 provided us in terms of scope and size and experience? And if that was considered Game of the Year, just because it's a sequel, then can Erdtree? But why not? Because it's considered and advertised as a DLC? Again, I think you know where I'm going with this. So much to say about this, but personally, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree opened my eyes to what our expectations are and what they should be moving forward and what you should receive as a product versus what you paid. And honestly, at the end of the day, regardless of how difficult it is, and the boss is just moving so fast. Regardless, I think at the end of the day, we've been truly blessed that there are developers like From Software that are able to provide us and deliver such a rich, large content and valued experience to us gamers. That they set the precedent for us and for developers to follow. Whether that changes the expectation of what it means to be a DLC, or whether that changes the expectation of what it means to be an expansion, or what it means to be a sequel, or what are the expectations for microtransactions moving forward and the value we receive. Ultimately, what a dollar means nowadays and the value that we receive from it. Now, it may not change the industry over time, but it certainly sets the bar and standard for other developers to follow. At the end of the day, all I wanted to say from this video was thanks From Software for setting our expectations right, from providing us such an amazing experience all the way from the base game through the end of the DLC. Thank you, and don't fucking change for anyone. That's it, jack-offs!